Ambassador Hyun stood in the center of the massive chamber, watching the vote numbers climb on the holographic display above his head. Around him, 847 different species sat in their designated sections. Some looked like insects. Some looked like clouds of gas held together by force fields. Some were so alien that humans needed special helmets just to perceive them properly. But today, they all agreed on one thing. Humanity had to go. The final count appeared in glowing letters that translated automatically into every language present. 783 species voted yes. 41 voted no. 23 didn't vote at all. The chamber erupted in noise. Chirps, roars, musical tones, and frequencies that made Hyun's teeth ache even through the translation field. They were celebrating. Hyun had known this was coming. He had spent 15 years working with the Galactic Council, trying to make humanity fit into their perfect system. 15 years of smiling at insults, accepting restrictions, and watching other species treat humans like dangerous children who needed constant supervision. He had hoped it would get better. He had been wrong. The council speaker, a tall being that looked like a walking crystal formation, raised one limb for silence. The chamber quieted down slowly. The speaker's voice came through clear and cold in Hyun's earpiece. The vote is final. Humanity is expelled from the Galactic Council. You have 6 standard months to comply with the following terms. The speaker's limb moved, and a new display appeared, showing a long list of demands. Hyun read through them quickly. Abandon every human colony outside the solar system. Give up all advanced technology and accept council monitoring devices on every human ship and station. Pay 40% of Earth's entire economy to the council for the next 100 years as punishment for being too aggressive and expanding too fast. Accept permanent observers who would watch everything humanity did and report back to the council. The speaker continued talking, but Hyun stopped listening. He looked around at the assembled species. Most looked satisfied. Some looked uncomfortable. A few, mostly from the species that had voted against expulsion, looked ashamed. But none of them spoke up. He thought about Earth, 30 light-years away. He thought about the colonies humans had built with their own hands. New Sol, on Kepler, 442b, where his daughter taught school. The mining stations in the asteroid cluster 7, where thousands of people worked to send resources back home. The research outpost on Titan's Child, where scientists studied exotic matter that could revolutionize human technology. All of it would have to be abandoned if the council got its way. Hyun felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear, not anger, certainty. He raised his hand, requesting permission to speak. The speaker looked annoyed but granted it with a wave of one crystalline limb. Thank you, Hyun said, his voice calm and clear. The translation field carried his words to every being in the chamber. The Galactic Council has spoken. Humanity hears your verdict. Some of the representatives leaned forward, probably expecting him to beg or negotiate. Hyun smiled. And it wasn't a friendly expression. We also rejected entirely. The chamber went completely silent. Even the ambient hum of the station's systems seemed to pause. Hyun continued, his voice steady. You expect us to crawl back to our home system and accept chains? You expect us to pay you for the crime of being successful? You expect us to let you watch our every move like we're prisoners? He shook his head. You don't know us at all. The speaker started to interrupt, but Hyun kept talking, his voice rising. We came to the stars because we refused to be bound by limits others set for us. We climbed out of caves and crossed oceans when everyone said it was impossible. We went to our moon when our own people said we'd fail. We built ships that could cross between stars because we refused to stay in one place. And, you think a vote will stop us? He looked around at all the different species, meeting as many eyes and eye equivalents as he could. You call us aggressive because we explore too fast. You call us dangerous because we take risks you're too afraid to take. You call us disruptive because we won't accept the places you assign to us. Good. We're proud of all of that. It's what makes us human. The speaker's crystalline structure pulsed with angry red light. "You are in violation of Council protocol. You will comply or face military action." Hyun laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that the translation field somehow made sound even more dismissive in alien languages. Military action? Against what? We're leaving. Not because you're expelling us, but because we choose to. You've just reminded us why we never should have joined your failing empire in the first place. You're so busy protecting what you have that you've forgotten how to grow. You're so afraid of risks that you've stopped moving forward. You're dying, and you don't even know it. He turned his back on the speaker. An insult in dozens of alien cultures. Humanity is resigning from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately. Consider this our notice. We don't need your permission to exist. We never did. Hyun walked toward the exit. Behind him, he heard every human delegate, observer, translator, and maintenance worker stand up and follow. There were over 200 humans scattered throughout the chamber. And every single one of them left with him. Nobody looked back. Nobody hesitated. The council representatives sat in stunned silence as the humans filed out in perfect order. Some of the aliens who had voted against expulsion looked like they wanted to say something, but they stayed quiet. Outside the chamber, Hyun pulled out his communication device and sent a single, encrypted message to Earth. 3 words that would change everything. Protocol. Horizon. Execute. Within minutes, he was aboard his personal ship. Captain Day was waiting in the pilot's seat, already running through pre-flight checks. Day was younger than Hyun by 20 years, but he had the same determined look in his eyes. "Did they buy it?" Day asked quietly. "They think we're beaten," Hyun replied, settling into the co-pilot's chair. "They think we'll either comply or hide in our home system, like scared children. And the truth?" Hyun allowed himself a real smile this time. "The truth is that we've been ready for this day since the moment we met them. The truth is that they have no idea how many of us there really are, where we actually are, or what we're capable of building when nobody's watching." Day laughed and pushed the throttle forward. The ship lifted away from the council station and turned toward deep space. Behind them, Earth's entire delegation followed in their own ships, forming a convoy that stretched for thousands of kilometers. As they accelerated toward the edge of council space, Hyun opened a channel to all human vessels. "This is Ambassador Hyun to all human ships and stations. The council has made their choice. Now we make ours. Activate Phase 1 of Exodus Protocol. All ships are to proceed to designated rally points. All colonies are to begin fortification procedures. All hidden assets are to reveal themselves and prepare for relocation. We're going home, everyone. Our real home. The one we built ourselves." Thousands of responses came back, all saying the same thing in different ways. Acknowledgement. Readiness. Defiance. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for a decade. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans could do when nobody held them back. 3 months had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Council. In that time, the galaxy had watched with confusion as humans did something completely unexpected. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They organized. And defension. The workin', and the workin'. They organized. Premier G sat in her office in Seoul, watching data streams from across human space flowing across multiple screens. Each screen showed a different aspect of the Exodus Protocol, in action. Ships moving. Resources being relocated. Colonies transmitting confirmation codes. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Dr. Hana entered the office without knocking. She carried a data tablet and had that excited look in her eyes that meant she had something important to share. G had known Hana for 20 years, since the scientist had been a young graduate student working on faster-than-light drive theory. "You need to see the latest numbers," Hana said, sliding the tablet across the desk. G picked it up and started reading. Her eyes widened. 104? I thought we only had 23 official colonies. We do have 23 official colonies, Hana confirmed with a small smile. The Council knows about those. They don't know about the other 81, or the 67 hidden outposts, or the deep space construction facilities, or the mining operations in regions they declared too dangerous to explore. Ji sat back in her chair, stunned. How did we keep this secret? Because we're human. Hana said simply. We go places other species won't. We take risks they refuse. Remember when the Council declared the Borealis sector off-limits because of the radiation? We built 6 colonies there. The radiation doesn't bother us much with proper shielding, and it scrambles their sensors perfectly. They never even looked. Ji shook her head in amazement. What about the fleet numbers? Hana's smile got bigger. The Council thinks we have 400 military vessels. They base that on the ships they've seen in Council space and near our official colonies. She pulled up another file on the tablet. We actually have over 2,000 combat ships, 15,000 colony ships, and 50,000 cargo vessels. Most of them were built in the Oort Cloud shipyards, completely outside Council sensor range. 2,000 combat ships, Ji repeated slowly. That's more than some Council species have. It's more than most Council species have, Hana corrected. And they're better too. Our ships don't use any Council technology. We couldn't trust it. Everything is human-designed, human-built. No back doors, no weaknesses they know about. Ji stood and walked to the window. Below her, Seoul stretched out in all directions. A city of 20 million people going about their lives. Most of them had no idea how close they had come to being forced to surrender everything. Most of them still didn't know how prepared humanity actually was. Why didn't we tell me? Ji asked quietly. I'm the Premier. I should have known. You did know, Hana said gently. You approved Project Horizon 10 years ago. Remember? You signed off on the Hidden Colony program. You authorized the deep space construction budget. You just didn't know how successful we'd been because we couldn't risk the information leaking. The Council has spies everywhere, Ji remembered. She had authorized those projects when the Council first started showing signs of hostility toward human expansion. She had hoped they would never be needed. And the Council still doesn't know? They're starting to figure out something is wrong, Hana admitted. Their observers are reporting that human ships are moving, but not in the patterns they expected. Colonies aren't being abandoned. Resources aren't being surrendered. We're not complying at all. And they can't figure out why. Across the galaxy, in the Kepler 442 system, Captain Day stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the largest gathering of human vessels in history. His ship, the Exodus, floated at the center of a formation that stretched for millions of kilometers in every direction. Ships of every type and size had answered the recall. Military destroyers, science vessels, colony ships, mining barges, even old generation ships that had left Earth decades ago and were thought to be lost. Day's communication officer, a young woman named Rin, looked up from her console. Sir, we just got a signal from the Pioneer. They're requesting permission to join the formation. The Pioneer? Day repeated, surprised. I thought that ship was lost 200 years ago. Apparently not, sir. They've been out past the outer rim this whole time, setting up deep space relay stations. They just heard about the expulsion and want to help. Day felt something swell in his chest. Pride, maybe, or hope. Grant permission. Tell them welcome home. As he watched another wave of ships arrive, Day thought about what Ambassador Hyun had said 3 months ago. The galaxy didn't know humans at all. They saw humanity's official presence and thought that was everything. They had no idea how far humans had spread, how many of them were out there, or what they were capable of when working together. His tactical officer interrupted his thoughts. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Council Space. They're sending an enforcement fleet to New Horizon Colony. They're demanding we evacuate immediately. Day smiled. Contact the New Horizon Colony commander. Tell them to execute evacuation protocol. 7. Are we going to fight them, sir? No, Day said. We're going to do something much more frustrating. We're going to disappear. 2 weeks later, the Council enforcement fleet arrived at New Horizon to find nothing. The colony was gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Simply gone. Every building had been disassembled. Every resource had been packed up and removed. Every person had been evacuated. The planet looked like nobody had ever lived there at all. The only thing the Council fleet found was a single communications buoy floating in orbit. It transmitted one message on repeat. The Council fleet commander sent a confused report back to headquarters. How does an entire colony vanish in 2 weeks? Where did they go? How did they move everything so fast? The answers were simple but impossible for the Council to understand. The colony had been designed from the beginning to be mobile. Every structure used modular components that could be quickly disassembled. Every resident had trained for emergency evacuation. Every resource had been pre-positioned for rapid extraction. Humans had learned from centuries of military history that sometimes the best defense was not being where your enemy expected. Ambassador Hyun was no longer an ambassador. He had resigned that title the moment he walked out of the council chambers. Now he was simply Hyun, coordinator of refugee operations on a colony ship heading toward the unknown regions beyond council space. The ship's common area was crowded. Not just with humans, but with aliens. Members of the 41 species who had voted against humanity's expulsion. Scientists who disagreed with the council's restrictions on research. Artists who chafed under censorship. Families who wanted their children to grow up free. They had started arriving 3 weeks ago. A few at first, then dozens, then hundreds, all of them asking the same question. Can we come with you? A young alien scientist named Vel approached Hyun carefully. Vel looked something like a 4-armed octopus, with bioluminescent patterns on its skin. Its species, the Luminari, were known for their scientific achievements. But the council had restricted their research for being too dangerous. I need to ask, Vel said, its voice translator making the words sound hollow. Why are you helping us? Your species was expelled. We're from the council that rejected you. Why let us join you? Hyun looked at the crowd of refugees. Dozens of species. Hundreds of individuals. All watching him carefully. Because freedom isn't a human concept, he said. It's universal. Every thinking being wants the right to make their own choices, to explore their own potential, to live without unnecessary chains. The council forgot that. They became so focused on stability and control that they sacrificed growth and liberty. But we're not human, another alien said. This one was Kree, a bird-like species with brilliant blue feathers. So what? Hyun replied. Some of the greatest humans I've known weren't born on Earth. They chose to embrace human ideals of freedom and exploration. That's what matters. Not what species you are, but what values you hold. If you believe in the right to grow, to explore, to take risks, and learn from failures, then you're welcome among us. Vel's bioluminescent patterns flickered with emotion. We are, Hyun admitted. We're dangerous to stagnation. We're dangerous to oppression. We're dangerous to anyone who thinks they have the right to control others without consent. If that makes us dangerous, then I hope we stay dangerous forever. Back on Earth, Premier G received the daily reports. More colonies successfully relocated. More hidden facilities coming online. More alien refugees requesting asylum. The Exodus Protocol was working better than anyone had dared hope. But there was one report that worried her. Dr. Hana had been spending long hours analyzing data from deep space probes, and she had requested an urgent meeting. When a scientist like Hana called something urgent, it usually meant trouble. Hana arrived with that expression on her face. Not excited this time. Worried. She carried a data chip and plugged it directly into G's secure terminal. Show me, G said simply. Hana pulled up images from deep space. structures on frozen worlds, technology, millions of years old, and something else. Data, warnings, written in languages that had been dead for longer than humanity had existed. "We found something," Hana said quietly. "And I think you need to see it before anyone else does." 6 months had passed since humanity left the Council. In that time, they had accomplished something remarkable. Over 100 human colonies now operated completely independently in regions the Council had never explored. Bastion Station, built inside a hollow rogue planet, served as humanity's new capital. It was invisible to Council sensors, protected by layers of rock and ice, and growing larger every day. Dr. Hana stood in the main research lab of Bastion Station, staring at holographic displays showing the ancient structures Commander Sung's team had discovered. The structures were impossibly old. The technology inside them was so advanced that human scientists were still trying to understand the basic principles. But the warnings were clear enough. Once the linguistic AI finished translating them, a young engineer named Wu worked at the console next to her, running analysis programs on the alien data. He had been part of the team that discovered the structures 3 months ago. "I still don't understand," he said. "If we were going to find something like this, why didn't we do this from the start? Why did we even bother with the Council?" Hana looked at him. Wu was 25, born on Mars, and had never lived under Council oversight. He didn't remember what it was like when humanity first discovered faster-than-light travel and found themselves suddenly face to face with thousands of alien civilizations. The hope that had existed then. The dream of peaceful cooperation. "Because we had to try," Hana said quietly. "We had to know if peaceful coexistence was possible. We had to give diplomacy a chance. Now we know. The Council doesn't want partners. They want subjects. So now we build something better." She turned back to the displays. The ancient warnings were consistent across dozens of dead worlds. A pattern had emerged. Advanced civilizations rose. They grew. They became comfortable. And stopped exploring. They created systems of control that prioritized stability over growth. And then something came and wiped them out. The warnings called it the Devourer. Commander Sung entered the lab. She was a stern woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent her entire career exploring the dangerous regions that the Council avoided. "You asked to see me, Doctor? I need your team to investigate these coordinates," Hana said, transferring a star map to Sung's datapad. "Based on the pattern of dead worlds we've found, there should be more structures in this region. I need to know if my theory is correct." Sung studied the map. "This is in the dark zone. No Council ship has ever gone there and returned. The spatial anomalies make standard navigation impossible." "But not for human ships," Hana pointed out. "Our drives work differently. We designed them ourselves, without Council help. They're more adaptable." "Okay," Sung nodded slowly. "I'll take the horizon out tomorrow. But if I find what you think I'm going to find, we're going to have a serious problem." "We already have a serious problem," Hana replied. "I just need to confirm how serious it is." 3 weeks later, Sung returned with data that confirmed Hana's worst fears. More dead worlds. Dozens of them. Some had been destroyed so long ago that their stars had died. Others were more recent. All showed the same pattern. Advanced civilization. Sudden extinction. No survivors. Hana assembled a team of the best scientists available. Not just humans anymore. Alien refugees who had joined humanity brought their own expertise. Vel, the Luminari, led the mathematical analysis team. A Kree physicist named Kira worked on the quantum mechanics. A human named Tay, who had been a military strategist before becoming a scientist, focused on tactical implications. They worked for 6 weeks straight, analyzing everything. The data from the ancient structures, the readings from the dead worlds, the patterns of destruction, Slowly, they built a picture of what the Devourer actually was. It wasn't a fleet of ships. It wasn't even a single entity in the traditional sense. It was something that existed partially outside normal space and time. A wound in reality itself, feeding on the energy of living things. It moved slowly by cosmic standards, but it was consistent. It arrived in cycles, drawn to the densest concentrations of life, and according to the mathematical models, it was coming now. Tay brought the analysis to Hana's office late one night. His face was pale. I've run the numbers 3 times. The entity moves at a measurable speed. Based on the timestamps we've extracted from the ancient data and the locations of the dead worlds, I can predict its current position. Where is it? Hana asked, though part of her already knew the answer. At the galactic edge, approximately 15 million light-years out, moving inward toward Council space. Tay pulled up a visualization. Tay. 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 At its current speed, it will reach the outer Council worlds in 50 to 100 years. Hana felt cold. 50 years was nothing on a cosmic scale. Many humans alive today would still be alive when it arrived. Does the Council know? They can't know, Tay said. They've never explored far enough to find the warnings. They've never seen the pattern. They're sitting in their comfortable inner worlds, congratulating themselves on their stability, with no idea what's coming. We have to tell them. Tay looked at her like she was crazy. Why? They expelled us. They tried to force us to give up everything we'd built. They wouldn't even listen when we warned them before. Why should we help them now? It was a fair question. Hana had asked herself the same thing many times. Because it's the right thing to do. And because if the Council falls, the Devourer will eventually reach human space too. We can't ignore this. They won't believe us, Tay warned. They'll think it's human propaganda. Another trick. Maybe, Hana agreed. But we have to try. Premier G called an emergency meeting of humanity's leadership. The meeting took place in Bastion Station's main council chamber. Present were the leaders of the major colonies, military commanders, scientists, and representatives from the alien refugees who had joined humanity. Hyun spoke first, presenting the evidence. The ancient structures, the warnings, the mathematical analysis, the prediction of when the Devourer would arrive. He laid everything out clearly and without exaggeration. When he finished, the room erupted in debate. We should let them face it alone, one colony leader argued. They made their choice when they expelled us. We're talking about trillions of lives, another countered. Innocent beings, who had nothing to do with the Council's decision. If we warn them and they ignore us, we'll have wasted valuable time we could use to prepare ourselves, a military commander pointed out. Admiral Tay stood up. He was a new voice in the leadership, recently promoted after his strategic planning had helped relocate 36 colonies without detection. There's another consideration. If the Council falls, the Devourer won't stop. It will keep coming. Eventually, it will reach us. Our best chance of survival is if the entire galaxy works together. The Council would never work with us, someone said. They hate us. They fear us, Hyun corrected. Fear can become respect if we show them we're serious. If we warn them about this threat, freely share all our data, and offer to help them prepare, we demonstrate that we're better than they are. We prove that humanity values life over grudges. The debate continued for hours. Arguments for and against. Concerns about being ignored or attacked. Worries about revealing human capabilities. Finally, Premier G called for a vote. The result was narrow but clear. Humanity would warn the Council. Hyun volunteered to deliver the message himself. He took a single fast ship across the border into Council space, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is former Ambassador Hyun, of Earth. We have discovered evidence of an existential threat to all life in the galaxy. We are transmitting all data freely. Believe us or don't. We'll be ready either way. The Council's response came within hours, not from the leadership, but from a low-level bureaucrat in the communications department. The message was brief and dismissive. Received. Message classified as human propaganda and misinformation. Warning. Further incursions into Council space will be met with force. Do not contact us again. Number date. Well, 44. Hyun read the message and felt no surprise. Only sadness. He had hoped, despite everything, that the Council would listen, that they would take the threat seriously. But hope and reality were different things. He returned to Bastion Station and delivered the news to the assembled leaders. They don't believe us. They've classified our warning as propaganda. Premier G nodded slowly. Then we prepare for war. Not with them. With something far worse. And we prepare without them, Admiral Tay added. If the Council won't defend itself, we'll need to be strong enough to survive what's coming. Dr. Hana had already started working on weapons. The ancient structures had contained hints about how previous civilizations tried to fight the Devourer. Most had failed, but a few had achieved temporary success. By studying their methods and combining them with human innovation, Hana believed they could develop effective countermeasures, reality anchor bombs that forced the entity into normal space-time where it could be hurt, dimensional disruptors that interfered with its ability to feed, quantum shredders that could damage its structure. All theoretical, all untested, but better than nothing. The alien refugees contributed their own knowledge. Vel's people had studied dimensional physics for centuries. Kira's species had developed powerful energy weapons. Other species brought their own expertise. Together, they created something new. Not Council technology. Not purely human technology. Something better. Combined knowledge from species working as equals toward a common goal. As the months passed, humanity and its allies built up defenses. Every colony became a fortress. Every ship was armed. Hidden factories worked around the clock, producing weapons and shields. Deep space monitoring stations were positioned at the galactic edge, watching for the Devourer's approach. And still, the Council knew nothing. They continued their debates and politics, completely unaware that something ancient and terrible was moving toward them through the dark spaces between stars. 18 months after humanity's expulsion, the first Council observation post at the galactic rim went silent. The Council sent a patrol ship to investigate. They found the station intact. The equipment still functioned. The life support systems were running normally. But every living being who had been stationed there was gone. No bodies. No signs of struggle. No distress signals. Just empty corridors and abandoned posts. The Council classified it as an equipment malfunction. Some kind of teleporter accident, they said. It happened sometimes in deep space. 3 weeks later, 2 more stations disappeared the same way. Then, a small research outpost. Then, a mining colony with 4,000 inhabitants. All gone. All without explanation. The Council couldn't ignore it anymore. They sent an investigation fleet, 12 ships with the best scientists and military personnel available. The fleet reached the last known position of the missing colony. They transmitted regular reports for 6 hours. Then they went silent too. The Council finally declared an emergency session. Representatives from all member species gathered to discuss the crisis. Some wanted to declare the Rim territories off-limits. Others wanted to send a military force to investigate. A few suggested that this might be related to the warning humanity had sent months ago. The Council's military commander, a proud being from a species that had never lost a war, dismissed the human warning entirely. This is clearly some kind of natural phenomenon. Space is full of dangers. We will send a proper fleet, well-equipped and properly trained, unlike those humans and their reckless exploration. The proper fleet was assembled. 200 ships. The best the Council had. They jumped to the Rim territories, with orders to investigate and neutralize any threat. They never came back. While the Council debated and denied and sent fleets to their doom, humanity prepared. Admiral Tay, now in command of humanity's entire military force, had spent every waking hour planning for this moment. He knew the Council would eventually face the truth. He knew they would eventually need help. He was ready. Captain Day, who now commanded humanity's largest combat group, ran daily training exercises. His ships practiced formations that no Council military would ever consider. Risky maneuvers, coordinated tactics that required split-second timing. The kind of strategies that worked only if every crew member was willing to take chances. Dr. Hannah worked with her team to refine the weapons they had developed. The reality anchor bombs were tested in deep space, far from any inhabited worlds. The results were promising. The dimensional disruptors worked, though they required enormous amounts of power. The quantum shredders were still experimental, but early tests showed they could damage things that existed outside normal space. Ambassador Hyun, meanwhile, had been quietly building a coalition. The 41 species who voted against humanity's expulsion had been contacted. So had sympathetic individuals from other species, scientists who valued knowledge over politics, military officers who recognized the real threat, civilians who just wanted their families to survive. The coalition grew slowly but steadily. These were species and individuals willing to act without Council approval, willing to work with humanity, despite the expulsion, willing to prepare for a threat their leaders refused to acknowledge. And then, the Devourer destroyed a minor Council world. 4 billion beings died in a single day. The world didn't explode. It wasn't burned or bombed. It simply went dark. Every living thing on the surface stopped existing. The planet remained, but it was empty, dead, silent. The Council could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. They declared full mobilization. Every species was ordered to contribute ships and forces for the common defense. Military commanders who had spent decades preparing for wars against each other suddenly had to figure out how to work together against something they didn't understand. 3 days after the mobilization order, the Council sent a private, encrypted message to humanity. It was brief. We may have acted hastily regarding your expulsion. We request assistance in the current crisis. We render honor. I seen money see. AC. We request assistance. We request assistance. Hyun read the message aloud to the assembled human leadership. Some people laughed. Some looked angry. Premier G just looked tired. How do we respond? Someone asked. We help them, Hyun said simply. Not because they deserve it. Because trillions of innocent lives are at stake. They'll want us to serve under their command, Admiral Tay warned. They'll want to control us like they always have. Then we make our terms clear. Hyun replied. We'll fight alongside them, as equals, not under their command. They take it, or they die alone. The response was sent within the hour. Short and direct. We'll fight alongside you. Not under your command, as equals. Take it, or leave it. The Council, desperate and running out of options, agreed. Admiral Tay presented his strategy to a combined meeting of Council military commanders and human forces. The room was tense. Council officers weren't used to taking advice from humans, especially humans they had tried to expel. But they were desperate enough to listen. Tay stood before a massive holographic display showing the galactic rim. The entity we're facing isn't like anything in your military databases. Conventional weapons pass through it. It exists partially outside normal space, but we've found a way to force it fully into our reality, where it can be damaged. He pulled up images of the reality anchor devices. These generators create a field that stabilizes dimensional boundaries. If we place them in a grid pattern and activate them simultaneously, we can trap the entity in normal space long enough to hit it with everything we have. A Council commander, a being that looked like an armored centipede, clicked its mandibles skeptically. And if this fails? Then we're all dead anyway, Tay said bluntly. This isn't the kind of fight where we have backup plans. Either this works, or it doesn't. How do we lure it into position? Another commander asked. Tay's expression didn't change. We use bait. Populated worlds in the sacrifice zone. The entity is drawn to life. We evacuate as many as we can, but some will have to stay to maintain the attraction until the last moment. The room erupted in protests. Using populated worlds as bait? It was unthinkable. It violated every council protocol about protecting civilian life. I don't like it either, Tay said coldly. But those worlds are going to die anyway if we don't stop this thing. At least this way, their sacrifice means something. At least this way, we have a chance. Premier G spoke up from the human delegation. The sacrifice zone worlds will be volunteers only. Any being who wants to evacuate will be evacuated. Anyone who stays does so by choice, knowing what they're contributing to. The debate continued for hours. But in the end, there was no alternative plan, no better option. The council approved Tay's strategy. The news spread quickly. Entire worlds would be used as bait to trap the devourer. Evacuation ships were sent immediately. Humanity opened its colony worlds to refugees, just as they had done before. Millions of beings fled the sacrifice zone worlds, but millions more stayed. Volunteers who believed their presence might save the galaxy. They were farmers, and teachers, and engineers. They were parents who wanted their children to grow up in a universe without this threat. They were people from hundreds of species, including humans, all willing to risk everything. Captain Day supervised the placement of the reality anchor generators. Each one was the size of a building, powered by miniature fusion reactors. They had to be positioned precisely in a grid spanning several light years. It took 3 weeks of constant work by thousands of ships. While the grid was being built, Admiral Tay assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. Human ships formed the vanguard. Council vessels filled in behind them. Coalition species who had secretly allied with humanity joined from the flanks. Over 10,000 ships, representing hundreds of different species, all working toward the same goal. Dr. Haina traveled between ships, making sure every crew understood how the weapons worked. The reality anchor would force the entity into normal space. Then they would hit it with everything. Dimensional disruptors to weaken its structure, quantum shredders to damage it, energy weapons to exploit any vulnerabilities. They would only get one chance. On the day of the battle, Captain Day stood on the bridge of the Exodus, watching the final preparations. His crew was ready. His ship was armed with every weapon humanity had developed. He carried the collapse initiator, the device that would seal the dimensional pocket once the entity was trapped. Someone had to trigger it manually from inside the pocket. Day had volunteered immediately. His crew had protested, but he had made his decision. He was willing to die if it meant the next generation could live free. Hyun sent him a final message. Your son will know what you did here. Humanity will remember. Day smiled. Tell him I kept my promise. The stars are safe for his generation. The fleet moved forward into the dark, toward the edge of the galaxy where something ancient and terrible waited. Every being, aboard every ship, knew this was it. Victory or extinction. There would be no middle ground. Admiral Tay broadcast to all vessels. This is it. Doesn't matter who voted which way 18 months ago. Today, we stand together or fall separately. Humanity is ready. Let's show this thing what life in this galaxy is made of. 10,000 ships accelerated toward their destiny, carrying the hopes of trillions. The Devourer appeared first as a distortion in space itself. Not a ship or a creature, but a wrongness that hurt to look at. It moved like oil spreading through water, dark and terrible and impossibly vast. Sensors couldn't measure it properly because it existed in dimensions that normal instruments couldn't detect. It was there, and not there, at the same time. The fleet held formation as the entity approached. Every crew member could feel it. A pressure on their minds that whispered of endings and emptiness. Some species were more sensitive to it than others. The Luminari, with their enhanced perception, suffered the worst. The entity reached the sacrifice zone worlds and began to feed. The volunteers who had stayed behind felt it first. A pulling sensation, like something was drawing their life force away. They had known this would happen. They had accepted it. Their final transmissions were messages to loved ones, farewells, and simple statements of defiance. We chose this. Make it count. Admiral Tay watched from his command ship and felt anger burn through him. Those people were dying to buy time for the trap to work. He wouldn't waste their sacrifice. All ships, hold position. Wait for my signal. The entity moved deeper into the zone, drawn by the concentrated life energy. It was working. It was coming to them. Activate the grid, Tay ordered. Across several light years of space, the reality anchor generators powered up simultaneously. The effect was immediate and visible. Space itself seemed to solidify around the entity. The distortion became clearer, more defined. For the first time, the devourer was fully present in normal reality. And for the first time, it could be hurt. All ships, open fire. 10,000 vessels unleashed everything they had. Energy weapons that could melt planets. Missiles with antimatter warheads. Dimensional disruptors that tore at the fabric of space. Quantum shredders that damaged things on the subatomic level. The combined firepower of hundreds of species, all focused on a single target. The entity recoiled. It twisted and writhed, trying to escape the grid. But the reality anchors held it in place. It was trapped, but it wasn't dying. The thing adapted quickly. It shifted its form, dispersing the damage across its vast structure. It learned from each attack, becoming resistant to the weapons being used against it. Tay watched the tactical displays and realized with growing horror that they weren't winning. They were buying time, nothing more. It's not enough, his tactical officer reported. We're damaging it, but not fast enough. It's adapting faster than we can adjust our attack patterns. Tay made a decision. Signal all ships to concentrate fire on Sector 7 to 9. We're going to punch a hole through it and collapse the pocket while it's still trapped. Sir, that will take everything we have. We'll be completely defenseless if it doesn't work. It has to work. Tay replied simply. The fleet repositioned. Every ship focused on a single point on the entity's structure. The combined firepower was incredible. Space itself seemed to scream under the assault. A crack appeared in the entity, a wound in its impossible form. It was working, but the entity fought back. Tendrils of darkness reached out toward the fleet. Ships that got too close simply stopped functioning. Their crews vanished, just like the beings on the observation posts months ago. The entity was dying, but it was taking as many with it as it could. Captain Day watched the tactical display from the Exodus. The fleet was taking heavy casualties. The wound in the entity was growing, but slowly, too slowly. They needed more time. He made his decision without hesitation. This is Captain Day, to all ships. I'm taking the Exodus into the center of the grid. Prepare the collapse initiator. ADD. ADD. Captain, that's suicide, his first officer protested. You'll be inside the pocket when it collapses. I know, Day said calmly. But someone has to trigger it manually. The signal lag from outside the grid is too long. If we wait, the entity might escape. He opened a channel to Admiral Tay. I'm going in, sir. Take command of the fleet. Tay's voice was heavy when he responded. Understood, Captain. It's been an honor. Day turned to his crew. Anyone who wants to evacuate has 2 minutes to get to the escape pods. Not a single person moved. His first officer spoke for all of them. We're with you, Captain. All the way. Mycross. 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 My cross. Day felt his throat tighten. Then let's make this count. The Exodus broke formation and accelerated toward the center of the grid. 6 other ships followed. All volunteers. All crews who had made the same choice. They would get close enough to trigger the collapse, while the rest of the fleet retreated to safety. As the Exodus entered the grid, Day felt the entity's attention focus on him. The pressure on his mind increased until it felt like his skull would crack, but he kept his hands steady on the controls. Collapse initiator armed, his weapons officer reported. Ready to fire on your order, sir. Day opened a final transmission to the fleet. Tell my son I kept my promise. The stars are safe for his generation. Admiral Tay, the fleet is yours. Premier G, it's been an honor. Humanity, stay crazy. Stay free. Stay human. He pressed the trigger. Reality folded inward. The dimensional pocket collapsed with a force that registered on sensors across the galaxy. The entity, the Exodus, and 6 other volunteer ships were compressed into a singularity that sealed itself behind walls of twisted space-time. The wound in reality healed, leaving nothing behind but empty space and fading energy signatures. The entity was gone. Trapped forever in a collapsed pocket dimension. Unable to escape. Unable to feed. Unable to harm anything ever again. But so was Captain Day and everyone who had followed him in. 1 month later, a memorial was constructed at the edge of the sacrifice zone. A massive ring of steel inscribed with the names of every being who had died stopping the entity. Humans, council species, coalition members, and the volunteers from the sacrifice worlds. Over 2 million names in total. Ambassador Hyun spoke at the dedication ceremony. Representatives from every species attended. For once, there was no politics. No hierarchy. Just shared grief and gratitude. They stood together, Hyun said, his voice carrying across the crowd and through countless communication channels to beings watching across the galaxy. That's what saved us. Not weapons. Not any one species' genius. Unity. Different beings. Different species. Different cultures. All working toward a common goal. We hope the galaxy remembers that. The Council, shaken to its core by how close they had come to extinction, began immediate reforms. The old hierarchical system was dismantled. New laws guaranteed freedom of movement and equal representation for all species. Technology sharing agreements were signed. Exploration of the Rim territories was prioritized, with human advisors leading the effort. They formally offered humanity full reinstatement to the Council, full membership with all rights restored, a formal apology for the expulsion, even monetary compensation for the hardship they had caused. Premier G traveled to the Council chambers for the first time since the expulsion. She stood before the assembled representatives and delivered humanity's response. We appreciate the offer. We appreciate the reforms you're making. But we've realized something in our time away from the Council. We don't need your approval to exist. We've built our own society beyond your borders. We've made alliances as equals. We've created something new that works for us. She paused, letting that sink in. However, we won't isolate ourselves. We propose something different. Keep your council for those who want it. We'll keep our coalition. We'll trade freely. We'll cooperate on scientific research. We'll share information about threats. But we won't submit to governance we don't choose. In short, we'll be friends. We'll be allies. But we won't be subjects. Not now. Not ever. The Council debated for 3 days. Some representatives wanted to reject the proposal. Others saw the wisdom in it. Finally, they voted to accept. The Treaty of Two Stars was signed, recognizing both the Galactic Council and the Human Coalition as equal sovereign entities. Neither superior to the other, neither subordinate. Partners by choice. 5 years passed. The galaxy changed, in ways nobody had predicted. Dr. Hana led the Joint Research Initiative. with scientists from every species working together to study the threats that lurked in deep space. They had found 17 more warnings from dead civilizations. The Devourer hadn't been unique. It was one of many dangers that existed in the universe. They needed to keep advancing, keep preparing, keep watching. Hana stood in her laboratory, now much larger than before, watching young researchers from a dozen species collaborate on a project. Vel the Luminari worked alongside a human physicist. Kira the Kree debated quantum mechanics with a council mathematician. They weren't separated by species or politics. They were united by curiosity and the drive to understand. Admiral Tay commanded the Combined Defense Fleet, a volunteer force drawn from all species. They patrolled the dark regions at the galactic edge, watching for threats. The fleet had grown to over 50,000 ships. Tay had named his flagship the Captain Day, in honor of the man who had saved the galaxy. He stood on the bridge, watching patrol reports come in. Nothing major today. Just the routine work of keeping the galaxy safe. He thought about Day often. About the sacrifice that had been made. About the responsibility to make sure it meant something. Ambassador Hyun had retired from politics. He taught at the first joint human-alien university, built on Bastion Station. His most popular lecture was titled, "Why Freedom Matters More Than Comfort." Students from hundreds of species attended, many of them children of beings who had been alive during the crisis. Premier G served her final term as humanity's leader. Under her guidance, human space had grown to over 200 worlds, not through conquest, but through settlement of unclaimed territory and alliance with other species. The coalition now included 73 species who had chosen to join humanity rather than return to the Council. She gave her final address from Earth, looking out at the city of Seoul, where this had all started. We were expelled from the galaxy. Many of you know the story. What you might not know is that it was the best thing that ever happened to us. It forced us to become what we were always meant to be. Not part of someone else's empire. Not subjects following someone else's rules. Builders of our own destiny. She smiled. The galaxy is bigger now. More free. More diverse. We didn't do that alone. We did it together with everyone who believes that freedom and growth matter more than comfort and control. And we're not done. The universe is vast. There are still mysteries to solve, dangers to face, worlds to explore. We'll face them all. Together. As equals. Well-Disney 1. Well-Disney 1. Well-Disney 5. To 1-1. To 1-1. On Bastion Station, in an observation deck overlooking the docking bays, an old man stood with his granddaughter. Wu was 70 now. Gray-haired and stooped. But his eyes were still sharp. The little girl, 8 years old and named Hana after the famous scientist, watched ships arrive and depart. Grandfather. They say we were kicked out. That we didn't belong. Wu smiled and knelt down to her level. We were kicked out. And in a way, they were right. We didn't belong. Not as subjects. Not as beings who needed permission to grow. We belonged as equals. What's the difference? She asked. The difference is freedom, Wu explained. The Council wanted us to fit into their system, to follow their rules, to be what they wanted us to be. But that's not who we are. We're explorers. We're risk-takers. We're people who climb mountains because they're there, and cross oceans because we can. We don't ask permission to exist. We just exist. Hana looked up at him with serious eyes. Can I be an explorer? Like Captain Day? You can be anything you want. Wu said, his voice gentle. That's the whole point. Nobody gets to tell you what you can or can't become. You choose. Always. The girl turned back to watch the ships. Human vessels mixed with craft from dozens of other species. Council ships visited regularly now, trading and sharing information. Coalition members came and went freely. The borders that had once divided the galaxy were blurring. Wu stood and looked out at the same view. He thought about everything that had happened. the expulsion, the exodus, the discovery of the ancient threat, the battle that had saved the galaxy. The 5 years since then, it had all seemed impossible at the time, terrifying, overwhelming, but humanity had done what they always did. They adapted. They grew. They refused to be limited by what others said was possible. The galaxy tried to make us smaller, Wu said quietly, more to himself than to his granddaughter. They tried to put us in a box and tell us what we could be. Instead, we became infinite. Beyond the station, stars stretched in every direction, endless, waiting, full of possibility. And out there, moving through that infinite darkness, were humans and their allies, exploring, building, living, free. The galaxy had voted to expel Earth. Humanity hadn't waited to be told twice. They had left on their own terms, built something better, and saved everyone in the process. Now they stood as equals among the stars, proving every day that freedom and courage could overcome any obstacle. The future was unwritten. The universe was vast, and humanity was exactly where they belonged.